First and foremost, I want to just thank our panelists and our speakers so much for being here today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here, working with us behind the scenes, being patient. And so here we are. And so we're going to get right into it. And I'm going to begin with Emiliana. Emiliana, if you could introduce yourself, let everyone know exactly what you do and what is the greatest leadership advice you've ever received.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Emiliana Guereca, also known as Emmy. I am the Executive Director of Women's March Action, which is an organization that I founded after I organized the largest march and protest in the city of Los Angeles, known as Women's March LA. My organization is focused on electing women of color, putting women of color into office. We were instrumental and very proud of our VP Kamala Harris as we co-organized with her. What is the number one advice? The number one advice for me was plan to succeed. So without a plan, you can't succeed. So plan to succeed. That was the number one advice given to me by my grandmother, who had a third grade education and still had her own business.
We're going to move to our next panelist, Miss Charmian Kinder.
Yes, and so I am Charmian Kinder. Hello, everyone. So honored to be here with you. I am the global head of PR at Global Citizen. It's the largest movement of change makers that organize digitally, really to call on government officials, philanthropists, and companies to do the right thing. And so we ask for people to step up and help change the world. The one piece of advice I got really came in the form of a quote. And it is, if you can't lead the people, if you don't love the people, if you can't save the people, if you don't serve the people. And that comes from the good Dr. Cornel West. And so I am someone who has always been a very proud Black woman from New Haven, Connecticut. My parents are from South Carolina. I have never made any mention about that. I am from Howard University. In any room I've ever stepped in, it's been imperative that people not only understand who I am and where I come from, but how that's a value add to the conversation we're going to have and the work we're going to do together. And so I come with that quote because I have always loved where I've come from. I love the people that I come from. And it's imperative that you carry that with you because no one else has it the same way you do.
Our next panelist is on the East Coast in NYC. Kavell, please introduce yourself. Let us know what you do. And again, what is one word of leadership advice that has impacted your life?
Yeah, hey everyone, Kavell Brown here from New York City, born and raised in Queens till I die. And I work at Viacom CBS. Viacom CBS is a media conglomerate of like BET, Nickelodeon, VH1, Paramount Pictures, VidCon, all types of things in between. And you know what I do there is facilitate social impact. So how does the Viacom CBS brand say, hey, like we're going to do good in the community. We're going to stand for justice. We're going to stand for different causes, areas, and we're going to volunteer and we're going to give philanthropic dollars out. So that's the team that I sit on. And I think some of the best career advice that I've gotten is the need to rest. I think, you know, during this pandemic, we've seen so much is going on. People have lost people have lost jobs, and it's really taken down the veil of like what's important in life. And I think resting for your soul so you can pour out for tomorrow is something that I really take to heart and super important.
We're going to move now to Giselle Ruiz. If you can introduce yourself, let the family know what you do, and what is one word of leadership advice that has transformed your life?
Hi, everyone. Josh, thanks for having me. As always, your energy is infectious. Giselle Ruiz, pardon me, I literally just got off a plane. I just flew home, which is Dominican Republic, to be with my family for a couple of weeks, but couldn't have missed this because I am you and you are me. I'm first generation Afro-Latina, born and raised between New York City and Boston. And my parents came from a third world country without speaking English and 8th grade educations and barely were able to help me, you know, figure out life. So this is incredibly important for me to be here today. And again, I think I'll say my biggest leadership advice is really that don't forget where you come from ever, and carry that into every room. Incredibly proud of what you bring to the table being first generation or whatever your identity might be. Currently, what do I do? I've worked at a lot of different places. Josh knows this. My resume is a little bit of a witness protection program, some of it by design, and some of it by just serendipity and God and walking into really great opportunities. But I recently returned to the entertainment business after being in tech for a while, and in leading diversity and inclusion for William Morris Endeavor, which is the oldest and the #1 talent representation business in the world. And, you know, we represent everyone from Oprah to LeBron, and really focused on changing Hollywood and the entertainment and media industry as a whole, to really make sure that we are authentically represented in entertainment and media. So that's me, super excited to be here, and let's get this party started.
And last but definitely not least, my man in the Yay area, as they call it. I'm born and raised from the Bay Area, y'all, so we got this thing go, the Yay area. Give it up for my man, Roderick Jefferson. Roderick, represent, let us know who you are, where you're from, and what is one word of leadership advice you would like to share with the students today?
Yes, sir. First of all, absolutely honored to be here, and I cannot wait to dive into this. Josh, your energy's there, man, and you know when I come, I got to bring it up to your level. So a little about myself. I'm Roderick Jefferson. I actually hold two positions now. One, I'm the CEO of Roderick Jefferson and Associates, and we are a sales training and sales enablement company. And I'm also in corporate America for the last 25 years. And I'm vice president of what's called field enablement, which is essentially a lot of training for sales folks and things of that sort. I was born and raised in Dallas. So stand up, Texas. I see y'all out there. But now I'm out in the Bay Area. So yay area. I'm going to let everybody know where we at. But I am here and I cannot wait to dive in. And I'll give you actually 1.5, kind of 2 pieces of advice. One, and then they both, like Emmy, came from my mom, a 6th grade education. And still to this day, I'd say she's the smartest person, not most intelligent, but smartest person I've ever met in my life. The first was quite simple. And she always said to me, you're going to find 8 to 10 jobs in your life. Your passion will lead you to what your profession will be. It'll find you. So don't worry about that piece. It's going to find you. The other piece that I got from a mentor of mine is, and it goes this way, if you're not ready to be a servant, you'll never be ready to be a leader.
Oh man, it's so exciting. We're getting ready to jump right into it. I'm not going to waste any time. I want to get to this first question. The title of this program is From Entry Level to C-Suite Executive. And I did that for a reason because number one, all of you are people of color, but number two, all of you are first generation students as well. And so I think there's some unique challenges that not only people of color face, but first generation students face as well once they graduate and get into the workspace. And so what I want to know is, as a first generation student graduate beginning your career, what are 3 specific things that they must be ready for if they're going to position themselves not just to get the job, but to begin to elevate, get promotions, and ultimately get a seat at the table? Whoever wants to chime in, let's rock, let's roll. Whoever wants to go, let's go.
As a first generation, and I have a unique, my parents were Black and Spanish. So I come from 2 very strong backgrounds, but there wasn't a ton of secondary and college education at all. There were goals to get there. And I actually had no desire and didn't think I was going. I went because of a basketball scholarship. So that was the door that opened. And what I realized, and I had always learned, was the 3 things. 1, get your education. Make sure you finish. Don't worry about what your major is going to be. Go in and keep an open mind, because I guarantee you, as you grow and you mature, it's going to change. I changed my major 3 times before I finished. So make sure that you finish, because as my mom used to say, they can take away everything else as far as rights, but they can never take away your education. That's first and foremost. The second piece is, I want you to go in and I want you to get comfortable with what I believe are the 3 strongest words other than I love you. And those words are, I don't know. There's an enormous amount of credibility in those words. It says 2 things. 1, you're teachable. And secondly, you're open to learning new things and you don't think you know it all already. And the third is, when you get into your career and you get into college and you start moving forward, don't let anyone, not your friends, not your social group, not social media, not your parents, no one drive where you are headed towards your career and what that major is going to be. They don't have to go to class for you every day. They don't have to get up and do it for you. You've got to make that decision, and you can't go just take classes because your friends are taking it or major in something that your circle is majoring in. You've got to figure out immediately how to take hold and ownership of you. Mom and dad's not going to be there anymore to get you up and get you off to class. No one's going to make you go. The teachers, they're not going to come looking for you. I'm not saying they don't care. They don't care. They care that you finish. They care that you show up. If you don't show up, that's on you. You've got to make sure that you take ownership of you and your future. And the fourth and final piece is, regardless of what you believe in, who you pray to, what you believe, you've got to have and you've got to know that you're not doing this by yourself. You are not alone. You've always got back behind you.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Who else would like to chime in? Please chime in.
I'll chime in. I'm going to say that the three things for me, I'm a Latina. I'm one of 13 kids, the first one to attend university, but not the last. Everyone after me has attended. And the difficult part of being a first generation is also the easy part, because you are a trailblazer. No one's done it. Go ahead, take those chances, right? I can tell you that my mission was, and still is, my mission was to elevate Latina women, to elevate Latina women. And I am now in my 40s, still elevating Latina women. I went in my 20s. True story, the restaurant I waited tables at to pay for my college because I did not have a social security number. I was illegal, as they called it. I now own that chain of restaurants.
Come on,
So
somebody.
you have what it takes. So you are, even though it may seem very difficult, take those chances, because you are a trailblazer for a reason. The other thing for me is setting the right goals. Setting the right goals was not getting the new shoes, not getting the new iPod, but making sure that my college tuition was paid. I was probably one of the only ones that would show up with cash from waiting tables. But setting the right, goals, but also remembering that as a trailblazer, bring your culture to it. I always set the tone of my culture no matter where I went, because I needed to normalize that women, young girls that look like me, were leaders. I needed to normalize that. So trailblaze, take chances.
So yeah, I mean, I think, I talk to college students all the time, and something that I tell them is knowing your values. When I think a career counselor said to me, she said, K-Val, how do you care about money? Is it a motivator? Is it an influencer? And those two things are two different things. How do you care about your time? How do you care about your relationship to your family? How do you care about that one thing in your job that you really care about that can transcend anything else? Because processes and monotony is going to be infused into your role. So once you get those things down, you can say, I know what I want to say yes to, and I know what I want to say no to. Right. And then when you go through that, you can say, you know what, like for me, like I chose a social impact career rather than the tech career. And I was like, hey, I know I'm going to make less coming out of school. Right. And I said, you know what, but the impact is the motivator for me. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to pour back into the community that I came from, for poor folks, Black and brown folks, left and right. And I think when you have that, you can say like, I'm moving forward in this direction. You can do that with conviction. You can do that with confidence. Versus beforehand, it's kind of like hard to choose which direction you go down. And the second piece I'll say to that is, as a first generation college student, one of my first said to me, K-Val, you are changing your family tree. And that hit me so hard, because, you come where we all come from, you're the first one to go there. And, when you're leading with a legacy in mind, and you're saying, like from this day forward, my family tree is going to look different. And it's not to say like, hey, there's not love, there's not community, there's not family from where I'm coming from. But this day forward, there's going to be health, there's going to be sustainability, there's going to be just love as I move forward from all the things that I come from. So I think those two things are just super major and just kind of keep me grounded as I move forward in my career.
The thing for me that I always remind myself of is we are our grandparents, our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? And so like, I think that's just to co-sign what everyone has already said. And I think if I could talk to my, 20-year-old self, 18-year-old self, college self as a first generation Latina, what I would have said is just know that you're walking into spaces that don't understand you, that don't value you, that will make you feel like you're not enough. It's not an equal level playing field, right? You will be one of the only or one of the few. And that is just the reality. That's not to be sort of somber. That's just the reality of like what all of us have had to navigate, and those that are coming after us will have to navigate, probably even for generations to come. And that can be really depleting and exhausting, and it can be really debilitating. So how do you make sure that you use what others feel is an adversity as your actual superhero gift, right? Like, how do you lean into your authenticity and your challenges and your experiences and what you've had to overcome to help people know that there's actually value in that makes you stronger. That's your discipline, that's your hustle, that's your grind, that's your work ethic, that's your commitment. That's all of those things that for those of, for us as marginalized and disenfranchised people, we're meant to feel like they are not good things, when in reality, they're the best things about us. And they are what make us get to the top of the, of the food chain. So I think for every moment that someone has made me feel as if I didn't belong, it was an opportunity for me to reinforce, all of the reasons why I did. So I'd really really underscore. And again, that just goes back to just like, be incredible. I mean, you said it, Emiliana, trailblazer, pioneer, like you just constantly have to never, ever forget where you came from. And where your family came from and generations before them. It's the thing that's always going to keep you anchored and never going to let the haters get in, and the noise get in the way.
I wholeheartedly agree. And one thing I would too say is, leadership is not a position, it's a lifestyle. It's something that you are going to start practicing now. You have power when you walk into a room. You have to understand who you are, whose you are, and where you come from. And so there are things I want you to remember in that power. And it's being passionate, it's being optimistic, it's being a hard worker, it's being engaging with people. And it's also being ready. And anytime you come in somewhere, you never let anyone take you off of your square. You sit there, you know that you belong there. Even if you don't see anyone in that room that looks like you, you come from somewhere. You come from people who care about you. You have a narrative. You belong there. You have new ideas and innovation to offer that space in that room. And what you have to do sometimes is be patient with people and have conversations with them and have a dialogue with them so that they can understand. And when I say engaging, that means maybe, people are not talking to you. There's no problem in talking to them. Ask them how their day is. Ask them what they ate for lunch. Ask them about their children. Ask them about their animals. Things that really help people to find common ground with you are really great ways to start building relationships. And relationships lead to strong leadership. Leadership is not telling people what to do. It's getting a consensus among a team and getting everyone to believe in the mission that they are going to do together. And so I would say use your power to build consensus, be engaging with people, make sure they understand exactly who you are and what you are bringing, learn about them so that when they are having down days, you can speak power into them. And that is how you build strong teams. And that is how you ultimately become an excellent leader.
I love it. I love it. Leadership is a lifestyle. Leadership is a lifestyle. I want to move to this next question, and we'll start with you, Sharma. We'll move back through. But I want to start with this next question. What are some unwritten rules of success within the workplace setting that students should be aware of that are critical to their growth and getting a seat at the table? Because, a lot of times, really it's important that we have a seat at the table. It's important that we're involved with decisions. Important, here it goes, that we're involved with decisions with money, especially as Cavell knows and Sharm, from that social responsibility place. Even sometimes when it comes to money for first generation students, someone's making decisions on how we allocate the money. And it's important that we're in those positions of power to have decisions and to know what's valuable, maybe what's not valuable, and a variety of other things. But again, to get to that position, there's a lot of politics involved. And I always like to share what are the unwritten rules, the things that people may not be aware of, but it's there, it's alive, and you better know how to navigate it to be successful.
I love hip hop music. I've always loved hip hop music ever since it started. I know the lyrics to songs back to like Wu-Tang Clan, Rest in Peace, DMX. Like, I can recite lyrics to you from many years ago. And I think what you have to understand when you're going into meetings is you're studying people's behaviors. You're listening to how meetings are run. You're paying attention to what leaders in their room. You're paying attention to how people respond to those leaders. And you are mapping your behavior at first until you learn what your leadership style is going to be. You have to understand what that environment is. Your goal, again, is to build a strong team that you don't even lead yet. So you really need to understand all the players on that team. You need to understand who's the quarterback of the team. You need to understand who's coming up with the song sheet and the list. And once you kind of have understanding of what's going on around you, you will then know how to jump into that scenario very well and adapt. I'm not saying change who you are. I'm saying make sure that you understand the best way to lead alongside other people inside of an environment. So that's an unwritten rule, because sometimes you want to appear as if we're smart, we did all our homework, we want to have 45 comments in the meeting, we want to respond and ask questions, everything somebody says. I did that all the time when I first started working. Dead giveaway that you haven't been in meetings. Some environments, there's a pre-meeting before you get to a meeting. The decision's already made, you don't even know. And you won't know if you don't have a cohort of people to tell you, hey, we're going to run over this presentation before we get in the meeting with the CEO. Do you want to come along? If you go into that meeting after 12 meetings, people have already had a conversation about what the outcome of the meeting is going to be, asking questions, that can alienate you from helping to guide the decision. So there's just a number of different ways. It depends on what environment you're in, but build allyship. People who are your mentors don't always have to look like you. I will say that again. People who are your mentors don't always have to look like you. Really pay attention to people who believe in your success, people who are receptive for you to grow, and ask for their feedback. A lot of times I used to sort of do projects and say, hey, can we do a 90-day evaluation? I would love to know what you thought about this project, well before my year-long evaluation even came. So what did that do? It helped me build consensus among the team that I cared about my work. It allowed me to get feedback before my official feedback came. And then I also heard more about what they wanted so I could adjust my path as I was going along. And in that way, people trusted that I trusted their leadership. They gave me more leadership opportunities. And then I was able to participate in meetings in a way that went well with the rest of the flow. And so you just really have to, the same way you pay attention to music, to your clothes, to culture, you're going to go into meetings, you're going to go into environments and scenarios, you're going to study those scenarios, and you're going to be the dominant player in that scenario because you know that environment so well that you are now able to influence people that you don't manage.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Anybody else want to chime in on that question? What are some unwritten rules that everyone must be aware of?
Leadership is not an accident. It doesn't just happen. It's groomed, it's prepared, and when that opportunity is there, it steps in the door and it kicks it off the hinges because it was already ready and was supposed to be there. The other thing I'll say is your net worth is determined by your network. The people that you hang with, the people you run with, the people that are in your inner circle will determine whether or not you're going to be successful or not. And the things that happen today and the hard work you put in today will determine what happens tomorrow and future forward. The final thing I'll say is you can't go in, and Josh, you know where I'm about to go. You can't go in hoping I get the right teacher, hoping that I get my major, hoping that I get into the right school, hoping that I get the right boss, hoping that I'm successful. Yeah. Because I'll tell you now, hope is not a strategy. It doesn't work that way.
Sometimes you got to make top ramen taste like steak, and sometimes you got to turn lemonades into lemonade. That is a very true statement. I want to move on to the rest of the panel. Cavell, Emiliana, Giselle, anything y'all want to chime in? I think Cavell just came up. What do you want to say, Cavell?
Just to be candid about it, like white supremacy is at play in these companies. Just to really be straight and honest, patriarchy is at play in these companies, imperialism, all the things. So I think and I name that and I bring that up because you have to notice that like there's the power structures at play, and there's agendas, there's political boundaries and ethos that are that are moving around you, and you have to know what your risk tolerance is. And that doesn't mean incrementalism. That doesn't mean don't push the envelope. That doesn't mean doesn't mean change the status quo. But knowing that you, especially as us trying to break the barriers that we come from, know what you can and can't give up. Know that like at the end of the day, change costs at the end of the day. And I don't mean to say that as in like where our lives are on the line, but sometimes what you say, all it takes is, well, okay, that was a tough cookie, right? All it takes for that to happen. So you have to learn how to say what's like Charm said, what's really going on in the room, and saying, okay, like, you know what, like I gotta feed my family. I got health insurance on the line. I got my salary on the line. But we, as people, we got to straddle that because, as we know, like as a closed mouth don't get fed, and none of us have no revolution has happened without anybody pushing anything. So we sit in that tension. So know that's there, and know what your risk tolerance is.
I want to piggyback off that, and I'll go to Emiliana and Giselle because you said something, Cavell. We actually were having this discussion on Clubhouse. It was like a roundtable discussion, and we were just talking about diversity. We were talking about inclusion. And, why certain people speak up and certain people don't, because there's so many issues in the world, right? There's so many things going on. And sometimes if someone doesn't say something, or let me say this, someone doesn't put an Instagram post, oh, they're not in it, they don't care, which is not necessarily true. because we deal with activism and social change, there's all different kinds of ways and roles in which people have. I've even learned sometimes it's better to be quiet and you'll be elevated, then you can make a change. And that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But what I did want to say is this, because you brought up something real powerful, is that in certain situations, when you speak up, your livelihood can become on the line. I think a lot of times, we talk about a lot of racial injustice, but in certain scenarios, when you speak up, that may be your livelihood. And not only your livelihood, that may be your family's well-being who's depending on your income. And so I want to ask the question, you pivoted me here. How do you make the determination if the sacrifice is worth it or not? Because I just think that, in this time of activism, and again, this goes across all levels, how do you determine, is it worth it? Because there's certain battles like, nah, that's not worth it right now. Yes, that's worth it. Now, ain't no one gonna always say this, because again, this ain't popular talk. People aren't gonna just come out and say that. But behind closed doors, people are having conversations. And unfortunately, now here I go. But unfortunately, you have a lot of chief diversity officers that have been just sitting there because they don't want to lose their position. Now, again, I'm not trying to point no one out, and I'm not trying to be that person. And again, I understand their situation. I don't know what's going on in their life. They may have food, families to feed, healthcare. You don't know. But at some point, there's going to come a point, right, where you got to make the determination, how do I determine whether it's worth it or not? And as a C-suite executive, as someone that could be making lots of money, have lots of stock shares, right? I had a friend, I say this all the time. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years, and he's telling me he's getting $100,000 bonus checks. And I'm like, man, I just need to stop this and go into corporate. I'm just like, yo, 100K, 100K, I'm like, yo. But he told me, this is the truth. He said, as a black man, he was more stressed than ever before. And when he was able to let go of that job and start his own business, he said it's the most free he's ever felt in his life. I was like, what? But I want to ask the question, how do you determine, what's that sacrifice? How do you navigate through that? And this is for Giselle smiling. She must have something to say. Emiliana, you on the front line already. So I'll let y'all chime in and take it away, because this is a real question.
I'll let Giselle go, Giselle.
This is a good one.
I think everybody lit up on this one.
Yeah, it's the story of our lives, right? And I'll speak backwards. Josh, I'm not one of those chief diversity officers that's just sitting in a job to collect a paycheck and is so concerned about pushing the envelope. I've worked at 10 different organizations in over 20 years of my career, and I will leave any place at any moment in time if I feel like they are not committed and invested to the betterment of our people. I don't work for any institution. I work for our people, first and foremost. And in every single interview, if you want me to run your work or this work, this is how we're going to do it, right? And I'm very clear about that. And so I think, to answer your question, I have now the privilege to have built a career where I can walk into rooms and I can be that authentic about the fact that I'm not going to sell myself and my values and what's important to me just to be able to keep a job and a livelihood. But there's levels to that, and that took time, and that is not every single day. And, I had to work up to that, right? And so perception is reality. Reality is perception. Everybody has to choose who they're going to be, and, in their careers, everybody has to choose what kind of leader they're going to be. And I don't judge anybody for what direction you want to take. I think you just have to have a very specific stance. I show up very authentically myself, but I'm also not the same Giselle in every conversation, in every meeting, with every audience, with every key stakeholder. Like, it's Game of Thrones and Hunger Games out here, right? So I think as you're younger, find the people of color, as few as they might be, or, anybody from an underrepresented group that has already fallen on the sword or has already built a level of social capital and reputation to help you navigate those waters when you're not able to sort of do that yourself early on, and really sort of, help use them as part of your tribe to really help you think about how you want to show up, But the thing for me, my choice has always been If I can't be me and I can't do this work for the betterment of the people, then I'm not your person, right? And that I've made that decision that that's the kind of leader that I'm always going to be. And it's meant that I've had to make really difficult decisions to walk away from money and walk away from stock and move again, right? And start all over again in a new career or in a new industry. But you just have to know what are you willing to sacrifice personally? Some people are not ready, willing to go into meetings and throw their jobs on the line. Yeah. I am, and I think there's no judgment either way. You just got to know where you want to be and who you want to be.
That's great. That's great. And I want to point out something Giselle said I think is so vital. Number one, Giselle was clear about her values, clear about who she is. Oh, that's so important. Clear about who she is, but she said something so powerful. She's there to serve the people. It's about the people. And I just want to just highlight, I think that's so powerful. It's about the people. I love that. Emiliana, I know I was, what do you have to say, Emiliana?
I'm going to say that there's levels. And I also want to clarify that I think it's always worth it. It's always worth it, because if you're going to be staying somewhere quiet, then you don't need them and they don't need you. So it's always worth it. I'm going to say that I walked into spaces where they've confused me for the cleaning lady. I have walked into spaces where they forgot that they spoke ill about me and someone said something that was really racist, right? But I need to walk in with my head on my shoulders with the goal, and I'm going to walk out with that goal achieved. Because the point of me being a Latina, of an executive director of an organization, is that I get to bring up people that look like me, so that the decision of staying in the room no longer becomes difficult. It is my job to make sure that there are people of color, first generation students, that the choices that I have had to make that were difficult will no longer be difficult for them. Right? So I think that it's always worth it, but you do have to, there are levels to it. You do have to think, okay, how long am I here for? What is my goal in speaking up? I grew up really, my parents saying, we don't make noise. Just don't make noise. We need a stable job, a good job, don't make noise. My motto is stay loud. Stay loud, because being quiet has gotten us nothing. Yeah. So I'm going to say there's levels to it. Make sure there is a goal for that fight you're about to go into, because it's worth it.
I want to double tap on what all three of the ladies have said, because I'm sitting over here listening, and I've been in corporate America as a vice president or an executive for 15 years. And for 14 of those years, up until now, I have been in the boardroom with every other ethnicity but anyone that looked like me with my haircut. And this is the first time. And so I have a different view on things right now. When I was younger, Emiliana, I'll go back to what you said about being quiet. I grew up in the projects in Dallas with a different mindset. There was no quiet. It was a closed mouth will not get fed. You speak up and you don't bite your tongue, because it hurts when you do that. But when you get into corporate America, as we know, that doesn't always work. So to your point, there are levels. You've got to learn the game and figure out when to speak up and when not to speak up. And how do you do that? It comes from getting mentors. It comes from getting sponsors that have been there before. And by the way, there's a difference between mentor and sponsor. A mentor speaks about you. They can get your resume in the right place, get you in the front of the line. A sponsor speaks for you when you're not even in the room, and they're willing to put their brand and their reputation on the line to make you successful. You've got to have those, right? And going back to what Giselle said, I wholeheartedly agree with you 100%. If I cannot bring my authentic and full self to a job, they don't get me. I've been blessed. I haven't had to do an interview for 15 years to get a job, because I've been pulled from one job to the next. But it's because they know what they're getting. And if I went to go interview, I don't think I would have gotten the jobs that I got, because I'm willing to speak up. And when it comes down to diversity and inclusion and equity in the words that we're talking about, here in Silicon Valley, where I've been for 20 years, they get excited when we move from 1% to 2% of diversity and people of color. I look around and go, no, you still got a whole another 90+% to get to before you get to 100 that everybody else looks like right now. So to me, diversity is about being invited to the table. Equity is about being able to order off the menu. Inclusion is about them coming and sitting at the table and breaking bread with us and listening to our story and valuing our story and including our story in the overall mission and goal of their company.
Awesome. I know Sharm has
That was the word.
That was the word. 'Cause I got another question I'm coming with. So, but go, Sharm.
Listen, I'm gonna try to be
right
brief
now.
here because this is important for y'all to know because this is not an if, it is a win. This is a win. This happens to you, okay?
Yeah.
And I think what's really important, what everybody has said, is you sort of have to make a decision. I actually kind of fumbled my way through it. I started in sort of corporate America, and it wasn't really fitting well, and I was speaking too much. It means that I wasn't in the pre-meeting. I was asking the wrong questions at the wrong time. Didn't work out well for me. People would like start sending me remedial courses. I knew I wasn't stupid. All types of stuff happened, right? And I ended up making a decision to go work for President Barack Obama. He was a senator at the time. I moved to Missouri, and I worked on that campaign with the intention that, because I was in communications, that we would have that family on TV. Many of you probably were in middle school for 8 years so that you all could see what power looked like in leadership of the United States of America for 8 years. I did that with a level of intention. Ever since I left that campaign and left the administration, I have only gone places that are very intentional about understanding A, where I came from, B, that when I get there, we are going to have a whole conversation about representation. Beyond that, I'm going to ask you extra questions about representation, and I'm going to challenge you when you're getting it wrong. But I only was able to do that because I made a very intentional choice of, okay, what am I about? I started to learn about myself. What was burning in my soul when I'm sitting in a meeting and people are talking about it and I feel like I can't speak and it's bothering me to the point where I'm stressed about it. That means that's a passion area. That's why, Joshua, what the field that you are in is so important. We are in the middle of a conference in the middle of a pandemic that is being done with excellence. You are lighting the way for many other young people to come behind you. We cannot always do that in corporate America. Every single person on this phone has something inside of them that the Creator put inside of them to do while they were on this earth. That is first. Your job and everything else comes after that. That spirit that you have inside of you will tell you which way you're supposed to go. It'll tell you what you're passionate about. It'll tell you when to speak and not when to speak when you start to listen to it. And so it is imperative that you listen to that thing. And when it tells you something is wrong, you speak, you pivot, you find another way. But that is when you start to refine who you are, whose you are, why are you here? What lights up when you speak? How are things supposed to move when you start to take action? And that is when you move in your power, and that's when you go find a job. You find a job that needs that, and you will never be unemployed.
Everybody talks about the glass ceiling and how we have to break through the glass ceiling. The thing that I learned early in my career is I don't care who you are, how big your hammer is, you cannot and you will never break through the glass ceiling. There has to be somebody on the other side of that ceiling that reaches down and pulls you up through it. We are the people on this stage here today and on this webinar for you to be those folks to help pull you up through that. So don't believe the hype around, I work so hard, I put in the hours, I get my grind on, I'm gonna break that glass ceiling. No, you will not. You have to have somebody that cared enough, that put enough work in, that's already on the other side of that glass ceiling to reach that hand down and say, you know what? You may not be ready yet, but I'm gonna pull you up and I'm gonna get you ready. And I put that on me and on my brand.
You said something real powerful, and it's like, it's twofold, but I gotta go to this other one. You won't get through it unless someone pulls you up. And that right there will say a lot. There's a lot to be talked about that. But I want to start here, and I really want to say this. For those of you, because many of you have been on powerful projects, been in powerful conversations. If you do me a favor in 30 to 45 seconds, if you can share it, the most powerful room you've been in, and what was the one word of wisdom you learned from that room? And I'm gonna start with Emiliana, because you've been in politics and you came from Georgia, so you've been in this, and I'm gonna go all the way across. Sharm, you worked in the White House with presidents and Miss Barack and Michelle Obama, so and Roderick and Giselle, and so Cavell. So y'all been some places. Again, what you can share. I know certain stuff you can't say nothing about. I understand that, but what you can share, most influential room you've been in, and one word of wisdom from that room. And I'll start with you, Miana. I want to go across the whole team because I'm so intrigued to hear this. It's gonna be good. Okay.
Most influential room was Super Tuesday with now President Biden, with Jackie Hawthorne and a bunch of women that decided to ask and demand that he vet a female VP named Kamala Harris. So the most important thing was ask. So I'm taking a picture and I said, I need you to vet women. I'm here to represent women. And they're looking around like, what did she just say? We all heard it. So that was the pivotal point when he said yes. And everyone in that room heard, yes, we will vet a woman. So, gives me chills still.
Woo! Okay, come on. So you gotta ask. When you get to that room, don't be scared. As they say, a closed mouth don't get fed. I love it. Cavell.
This is a hard one. I think I sit on an equity and allyship council at work, and we were in like the room with the head of global communications and marketing, and my boss was in the room too. And we talked about all the work that we were doing. And in that moment, like, we advocated for us to get paid for the work that we were doing, which is like, a lot of times that doesn't really happen because it seemed like we're supposed to do this work. We're supposed to like put our hands on the table. We're supposed to like turn the wheel. And in that moment, and people asked why. And I think it's being able to defend your position and get through that logic and get through that point is so important. And ask and being able to lean into that kind of that tension is something that is so needed, because sometimes without that tension, things don't move. So I think that's something that really spoke to me.
Wow, that's good. That's powerful. I love it, man. And did they give it? They gave it to you, right? They gave you the raise?
No.
But you still asked for it. That's all that matters. You asked for it. And that's a good point, because sometimes they're going to say no, but you don't stop asking. You keep on asking. I love it. Giselle.
Yeah, I mean, what can I share? Listen, I've been in a lot of big rooms. My job, all of our jobs, is incredibly difficult. Like, literally, I'm trying to dismantle white supremacy and, end racism. So, currently in a lot of different industries, but currently in the entertainment and media space, right? And so I think a room that comes to mind is just being surrounded by, all of our top senior executives and board members who are all white, incredibly wealthy men, who spend a lot of time going around a room, excusing themselves for the fact that they've built an entire industry that is mostly white and straight and male. And being able to stand up in that room as a Black, brown woman to say, bullshit, excuse my language, this is by design, right? And I'm not going to let any of you off the hook in any way, shape, or form. And, I don't care if you don't sleep well at night because you did this. You created this. You did it intentionally. You walked up and down rooms and into board meetings and made decisions and golfed and paid people and elevated people and amplified people that looked like you. And you did that with intention and purpose. Now I'm here to help you fix it, but I'm not going to allow you to tell yourself the narrative that this was just by coincidence, or because people of color don't exist and weren't trying to get into these roles or opportunities, or because this was just haphazard in the cards that were dealt. So I would say those are the rooms that are most important to me, because those are the conversations that I think matter most in my space, is being able to tell the monster, right? Like the boogeyman, that, what you've done is not okay. Wow. So I'll leave it there.
That's amazing. Wow. Awesome. Standing up with courage and, whew, man, I'm getting inspired today. Come on. Sharm, Roderick, it's on y'all. I'm getting inspired. I don't know about y'all. I'm getting inspired. This is great. Yeah. So
I'll give an example of something that is not normal, but important to underscore to Roderick's earlier point about someone being on the other side of the ceiling. I used to work in the East Wing of the White House, which I found to be an incredible honor. And it was for the first Black First Lady of the United States. And we always had these things, come up where we were, responsible for all American people and their lives. And so we would get a lot of criticism sometimes, on equity and inclusion things. And Common was supposed to be coming to the White House, and there's something that come up with his lyrics where they demonized some things he said about, police. So, my job there was researcher, and I was responsible for really presenting the facts on like what had been said and what the risks were. And of course, most people thought it was very dangerous for the first lady to invite Common. But I'm, again, rap music, fan, have known Common most of my life from a not necessarily personally, but from seeing him on screen. And I'm like, Common's not a gangster rapper. He's just not. Like, if we don't invite him here, we're going to look tone deaf, and we're going to look like we don't understand who Common is and what he stands for, right? And so I must have told this to like at least 10 or 12 different executives in the White House. And I actually fully expected my report to come back and for us to uninvite him to this event, which I knew would be catastrophic for our reputation externally. The report went upstairs, and the first lady made a simple decision, and she said, he's coming. And that was it. And he was there 3 hours later.
Wow.
And so what is important about this is authenticity. Authenticity. When you come somewhere, I don't care how many senior advisors you have around you. If you are somewhere and you know the truth about something, it is imperative for you to stand in that truth because it has a ripple impact for the people coming after you. And it's important. Common has been he's an incredible artist and was already doing all these things well before he came to the White House. But the fact that the first lady would not, disassociate herself from him, that she knew him from Chicago, that she knew he was an amazing poet, that she knew he was a talented artist that shows up in the world and says great things and inspires other people, and that she was able to stand on that meant mountains that day. Because I worked for a boss who was able to stand in her truth and authenticity, and therefore ensure that we were validating the African-American culture as a result and as a vital part of these United States of America. And that was the right call, and it was made. And so I really appreciated that. It taught me a lot about leadership. It taught me a lot about being in difficult situations and needing to manage optics and keep stakeholders happy, but also to be who you are and stand in your truth. And that day was something that really helped to shape the rest of my leadership career and how I make decisions.
That's great. That's great. Whew. I want to piggyback on that for you, Roger, because there's something I've learned I think about 5 or 6 years ago. Because especially nowadays when we do a cancel culture and stuff like that. And one of the things that I heard a lot of people are going to make mistakes. And I'll just go on and say, I'll put myself out there. I think when we deal with the work around diversity, inclusion, equity, sense of belonging, some people are going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I really believe people are going to make mistakes, and I think we're going to have to forgive people for the mistakes they make. Now, some are just racist. I'm not giving them let's be understand. I want you to understand. But some people are going to really make mistakes. They're going to have humility, and they're going to realize they made mistakes. But I say that to say this. I say when we determine someone's character, never determine a person's character by one action. Determine a person's character by their track of work history. In essence, so many times we determine who someone is by one action, but we've never looked at their entire history. And I wanted to bring that up because when Charmin's bringing that up, Common says something, and in whatever the case may be, they're getting ready to make a decision, but they don't know his track record. They don't know what he's done, and they're making one issue that they may not agree with, and all of a sudden he's the worst person in the world. And I just think it's always important to remember that character is not built overnight. Character is a long process. So really practice on doing the right thing consistently. And when you even surround yourself with people, look at their track record before you just look at one event. But I just want to share that because I thought that was a good interjection. Roger, what did you want to say?
First, brother, I don't want to disagree, but I'm going to have to caveat what you just said. There are some things that are so egregious, all it takes is one act.
Yeah.
There are some things, and I'm just going to keep it 100. I've been in boardrooms and met someone that day and walked away with, I know what you're about, and I'm not about you. Mm-hmm. And that was a snap decision based upon what went on. Yeah. So to answer your question, there were two rooms. One, I was at an executive summit, and I was sitting here. To my left was Prime Minister Netanyahu. To the side of him was Charlie Rose, a anchor from the Charlie Rose Show. Next to him was Bill Gates. Next to him was General Colin Powell. Next to him was my CEO, and next to him was me. What did I learn that day? I am a former nappy-head black boy from the projects, and I held my own at that table, and I deserved to be there. I earned my right to be there. Yeah. I got comfortable with being uncomfortable. I was terrified walking in that room. What am I going to say to these guys? And you know what? The whole time I'm sitting there with General Colin Powell, and he's whispering, talking baseball to me about what was going on in the World Series. And I'm thinking, there's commonality here. When I said I was from the projects, there was commonality there. We understood each other. We could talk about music. We could talk about different experiences in life. So no matter what room you walk in that room like you have earned the right to be there, and you deserve to be there. Regardless of where you come from, everybody and I mean everybody, was a beginner and an amateur one day. Just because they're a pro right now doesn't mean they were always there. To your point, Joshua, we're all going to make mistakes. The first thing I tell my folks whenever I take over a new organization is I'm going to give everybody in here carte blanche, opportunity to make mistakes. And I guarantee you, I'm going to probably make more mistakes than all of you. So let's go make it happen. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. The other room, and Charm, you've lived it, was, and I'll put it up on the screen, lunch with President Obama. We sat for an hour and all we talked about was basketball, NBA. And I'll say this, what I learned that day, that man knows hoop. He can run the world, and he can also sit down. President Obama is someone, and Charm, and you'll say, I know you'll agree. He is somebody that you could sit down with literally at your family barbecue, play spades and dominoes with, and he could still go back and change the world 20 minutes later. Yep. Don't ever be afraid because of who someone is. My mom taught me when I was a little boy. Titles are something, and she said at the time, that you put on a business card. Now I say title is just something that you put on LinkedIn. That's it.
Rapid fire time. We have rapid fire, and man, this session went so fast. The time is about, but we have some questions real quick. So I want to give everyone 1 minute to answer the questions. So this is the first question. Whoever wants to take it, take it. You have 1 minute. Here's the question. What are some strategies you as professionals use to network efficiently? What are some strategies you use to network efficiently? Whoever wants to take it, chime in. You have 1 minute.
I'm huge on networking just because I think it's the most important thing, but not from the purpose of doing it when you need to, right? So build authentic relationships. I know a lot of people, and I am constantly asking others to support me, and I am always available when people need me to support them. I don't have relationships that are just based on I only interact with you when I'm asking you for a favor, and that has paid dividends for me throughout my career. So just build natural, organic, authentic relationships. You have no idea the person that was at square one 10 years ago is going to show up at your company or in your future in another way 10 years later. And the last thing you want is for them to be making a decision about the fact that you didn't care about them in that moment because you couldn't get anything out of them in that situation. It comes around, it goes around. So just be authentic and honest and build relationships without the sake of thinking about what you're going to get in return.
Next question deals with leadership. There's leadership theories, and then there's practical experiences as it relates to leadership. Which matters more, theory or practical experience, or really does it matter at all? So who would like to take that question?
I'll take that one. The answer is yes. Yes, they both matter, and they both matter at different times, right? And the way you find this out is, and I'll again double tap on what Giselle just said. Start now with informational interviews, right? And to people that you consider leaders that are around you. And an informational interview is as simple as, I just want to understand how you got to where you are today. I want to understand what you went through. Would you go through this again? And look, people are going to talk about themselves. That is the most non-threatening thing in the world, is to ask for an informational interview. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm not asking for a job. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for assistance. I'm asking for you to just tell me your story. Mm-hmm. So going back to that piece on practical application versus theory, if you cannot marry those two, you will never be a successful leader, because in different situations, it requires a skill set that is tactical. There are other times that it requires a skill set that's strategic. And then there are other times where you have to be tactically strategic.
Awesome. Wonderful. Next question. I'm sure everyone's going to have something to say with this one. Have you ever been in a company where there was a need to diversify the talent? And if so, how did you address it?
Well, that's all of us.
That's everybody else
here. That's the question, so I'm just asking.
That's all of us.
I'll go. I typically will always, a long time ago, before social media, I used to take over Black History Month and Latino History Month all the time and go find like the proper ally to lead it. And we would always just do it. Like we would always like invite our colleagues. And so that was the tip to break the ice. And then I would offer myself as a resource. I happen to have gone to an HBCU. So I went to Howard University. And so there are binders, if you will, of people who are talented and hungry to go and work in jobs, and they are my fingertips. I was emailing my school, every single job, sending back opportunities, asking for candidates, asking people to come for informational interviews. And I just offered myself up to actually be that resource. I didn't see it as a job, but it's also a passion area for me. I believe in brainwashing kids towards excellence and providing opportunities and pathways for them to get there. And so that's just something that's inside of me. So I do it. And so that's something I've done at every job is just offer myself up. I'm a team member with HR. They know to come to me if they're looking for talent, and I have no problem finding it. And also reaching out to my network, even if I don't personally know the person, I know that we know somebody that knows how to do that job. And so I always send at least 1 or 2 resumes or names back so that they know they can come to me as a resource and that I'm not sort of just spitting hot air. But I do take those opportunities every time I go into a space to offer myself up as a resource in that way. And it helps to build pipelines and trust.
Most influential leader in your life ever and why in 60 seconds? I will start with Emiliana.
Most influential leader for me was Michelle Obama. I have had the opportunity to sit with her, and her last book so resonated with me that she did not want to get lost in her husband's shadow. My husband is an ESPN reporter, and I'm like, where am I? I got to get myself together here. So not losing yourself in a partner's shadow. She's the most influential for me. I'm also raised in Chicago and Cabrini Green. And so, I mean, for me, it's just like, it's her.
Awesome. Giselle.
Always the same person, Daisy Auger Dominguez. She's my personal Oprah. She is the CHRO right now for Vice, but I met her when Charm and I actually worked with her at Disney. And she's the first, she's Dominican like me. She's the first senior leader Latina that I actually saw like incarnate in life. And so to see myself represented by someone who was such a boss, she's got like an insane work ethic, the biggest heart I know. Just 24/7 driven and committed to the embetterment of everyone and everything, while also looking fly. So she's who I want to be when I grow up. So it's always Daisy Auger Dominguez for me. If y'all don't know her, she's one to know, and she's always killing the game. So
awesome, I love it. Cavell.
For me, it's a guy named Dennis Williams. He was my first boss out of college. He is currently head of CSR at Warner Media. And Dennis is just, I've cried with Dennis, like literally, like he's a friend, he's a mentor to me, literally showed me, I'll give a quick story. I remember on so many levels, not just on a career level, but also on a man level. I think like to see him walk inside with his dark son coming into, and I say that purposefully, in through the door of corporate America. And for me to see a Black dad walk his son into the room, like just really just touched me in so many different ways. And he showed up for me and cared for me in ways that I didn't know I needed. And that he just really a special place in my heart.
Wow, that's powerful. Awesome. Sean.
So I used to always say this, but my posthumous mentor is Harriet Tubman. I have just always carried her spirit with me throughout things. I think the main thing is just knowing, like, you can't get somewhere and get comfortable. Like, it is your responsibility to go back and make sure that other people have a pathway to get to where you're going, that they do better than you when they get there, that it's intentionally done, that you're training people as you go along while you're doing it, and that you don't come from yourself. This is a long history and history and lineage of people who have been taking steps for me to be sitting where I'm sitting. Yeah. So it is my responsibility to make sure I make good on all of those efforts. And that's just the person that I've always like kept with me. Like, even when I've gotten tired, like, this is ridiculous, I'm like, well, I have no right to like just stop the mission. It's been going on for quite some time. So that's someone I've always looked to and admired for what she did. And hopefully we'll keep it all going.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Roderick.
I'm going to have to split the first one in two, and it's my two moms. And I say two because one gave birth to me and one adopted me and raised me in an altogether different family. That's how I moved from Texas to California. And the great thing about both of those women is they both ensured that I never lost touch with either one of them, and that I had an influence from both of them, from my maternal mother as well as my adopted mom. And to this day, I don't know what life is like without that, and wouldn't want to know. The second is the conversation I talked about earlier. That 1 hour with President Obama changed my life. Not because I sat down with the first Black president, not because he sat in the White House and had power and dominion globally, but because I had an idea of what an executive was or what was supposed to be as a Black executive. And when I walked out of that room with a completely different mindset that said, stop trying to be a Black executive and go back to just being a strong Black man, an influencer and impactor. Because even with the position he held, he is the most down-to-earth person in the world. And I walked out of that room saying, my new mission is to make everyone that I come in contact with, especially people of color that I mentor over and over, to walk away from me with that same feeling that I walked away from him that day.
And I'll say this, me and Roderick are great friends, and every time I leave Roderick's presence, I become better. So Roderick's gotta let people know he is not just saying that to you. That is a true statement. My man Roderick, every time we have a conversation, we'll talk every, 2 to 3 months. What's up, Roderick? Yeah. We'll have a conversation, and I always leave better because of him. And I just had to say that he's living what he says, and I just want to let everyone know that as well. As we close, this is my last question. You're on national television. You're on every platform in the world. What are you going to tell them? Go.
I would stand up and I would tell them, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, 1, you are enough right now. 2, you have earned and continue to earn. And 3, you, as it was said earlier, you are your grandparents and your elders' wildest dreams. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't do anything, because I grew up, and I'm gonna hit you hard right now, Josh, because we talked about this. I grew up in the projects. I kept hearing what I couldn't do, what I wasn't worthy of, what I wasn't going to do, and how I wasn't going to do it. And you know what? 2 days ago, I became a best-selling author on Amazon. I can do it. Yes, I can. And so can you.
I love it. I love it. Can y'all give Roger a big round of applause? All right, Giselle, are you ready?
But you know what? I don't want to answer that question. I really want to make sure that I say what I think is the most important thing I want to say, which is you don't have to wait until you have a title or an office to consider yourself a leader. Leadership is not responsibility or title. We all are leaders in our own right. It's being a coach, it's being an advocate, it's being a hype man, it's supporting people, it's standing up for what's right, it's advocating, it's reaching out and bringing somebody along. It's all of those things, and every single one of you is a leader in your own right. Every single one of you can make a difference and impact in somebody else's lives. Do not wait until you have a title that says you can lead in order to start leading. Please lean into that right now, wherever you are, wherever you sit. Do what you can to make a difference for somebody else's life.
I love it. I love it. Give Giselle a big round of applause. Awesome. Awesome. Shar.
You know, I would just say, tell them we are rising. And I say that because you are connected to a long lineage of people who expect you to do well. That's how the Voting Rights Act happened. That's why we're sitting here. We expect you to get out here and do well. We expect you to do better. We expect you to far exceed any position, any title, any salary we've ever had. We expect you to innovate. We expect you to walk in rooms and tell people exactly who you are and what you think about the world. And we expect you to change the course of how history is going to operate, because you are going to be so effective that nobody will ever say that you can't do something ever again. So tell them we are rising, and I expect great things.
Come on. Give it up for Shar. Give it up for Shar.
Joshua, I'm sorry. I have to say one thing really quick.
Yes.
And this is a thank you to everybody on this panel, and thank you to you and your organization for putting this together. And I say this to the audience. While you've heard some incredible stories from everyone that's on this panel, and they've all done some wonderful things, allow us to be the floor, not the ceiling. You stand on us to get to that ceiling.
Come on. Yes, come on. Let's go. Cavell.
Hey, if it was, if I'm on the biggest stage, I would say really just radical hope and radical love. I think when hope is a fuel that says, hey, I'm dreaming for a future that I can't see right now. And I think the people behind us and the people that we come from have always had that. They said, I can't see it, but I can hope for it. I can dream for it. And I say this radical love because I think at the end of the day, this work is spiritual work at the end of the day. And I think on the other side of that email, in that meeting, wherever that event is at, people are people, and we're connected. So I think when you say like, hey, I'm gonna love people in a way that's unconditional. I'm gonna love people in a way that's authentic. And at the end of the day, I'm moving to in a spirit of love. I think that's the greatest thing you can do. And I think if we keep those two things alive, hope and love together, and we keep dreaming for what we want to see, and to know that future that we can build and we can still in an anti-oppression framework, that's the key right there.
I love it. I love it. Give it up for Cavell. I love it. I love it. Emiliana, what is your word for the world and all that good stuff?
Every first generation student, everyone that is here should be fearless in the pursuit of purpose, not having fear, but having less of it. Fearless in that pursuit of purpose, and plan, and execute. Unless you execute on that dream, then you have not planned enough. But be fearless in that pursuit, not have fear, just a little bit less of it. And know that we are here. Network with us, link in with us, and we can figure out how to connect you. We can figure out where is your next step. We are all here because you are here. And you will be here, hopefully in a few years, talking to other first generation students. So thank you for attending.
Awesome. So want to give Emiliana a big round of applause. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm going to close with this. I just felt inspired to share this. So if you looked at my history and you went to my website, and you would see I've spoken and I've traveled and wrote books and did Circle of Change. But the truth be told, I have not reached my fullest potential. And the reason I haven't reached my fullest potential is not because of someone else. It's because of me. It's because I got to a place where I became comfortable, not because I didn't have the potential to go higher, but because I allowed the fear of rejection or failure to stop me from really going where I know I'm supposed to go to. But this year I made a decision that I'm going for it all. Like I'm challenging myself to think bigger than what I actually can do. And that took the ability to say, I got to break whatever mental blocks or comfortability that's holding me back from going forward. The thing about it is when you start moving in that and you start being authentic of who you are, you're going to have some people that are going to like you, but some people aren't going to like you because they're not going to be used to you being true to who you are, which is the great leader. Every great leader in life has been loved and has been greatly hated. I tell people all the time, if President Obama gave out $1 million to every single household in America, there's still going to be a group of people that are going to have something wrong with getting $1 million. And so at the end of the day, you're not there to please people. You're there to do what you've been spiritually purposed to do, and that's be your best self, leave a legacy, and make the world much more better than what it was before we were here. I want to thank y'all so much. We're getting ready to wrap it up. Thankful for our panelists. Thankful for this session. Y'all got me turned up right now.